Hello, and welcome to I'm Too Busy. I'm Christina Flack, your host. I'm a celebrity makeup artist and CEO with a passion for all things beauty, wellness, and success. On this show, I'll take you on exciting journeys, sharing personal stories and insights from inspiring entrepreneurs. Together, we will explore manifestation, health, wellness, and the secrets to thriving in life and business. Let's jump in and get inspired. Today on I'm Too Busy, we are diving into one of the most important and misunderstood topics in women's health, hormones, aging, and what it really means to feel like yourself again. To be totally transparent, my next guest is my doctor. And the funny thing is, my best friend, Diana Stobo, told me that I needed to get my hormones checked. And I told her she was crazy because I thought I was the most healthy person on the planet. Little did I know that I found out I was lacking in. My hormones were off the chart terrible. My vitamin take was a disaster. So I'm super excited to be joined today by Dr. Marsha Nunley, a board certified physician with decades of experience in internal medicine and into integrative health, who specializes in bioidentical hormone therapy and helping patients restore energy, balance, and vitality. What I love about her approach is that she doesn't just treat symptoms, she looks at the whole person, mind, body, and lifestyle. If you've ever felt off, exhausted, and not like yourself, or wondered if your hormones could be missing the piece that we all need, this conversation is for you. Welcome, Marsha. How are you? Good to see you.
Dana, it's lovely to be here.
Yes, I remember our first call and I'm like, oh, my hormones are fine. But I feel terrible, but I'm exhausted all the time. And then we did my blood panels and oh my gosh, what a mess. So you have went through your own health struggles that traditional medicine couldn't solve. What was the turning point for you emotionally and physically?
Well, that's been a long time ago. I've been on hormones 25 years, so that's kind of have to back up there. But I was practicing medicine, internal medicine in San Francisco, and I just energy was just terrible. I ended up seeing doctors. I ended up on some thyroid medicine that never really helped, antidepressants, the whole bit. And nobody ever said anything about. I was in perimenopause. And nobody ever said anything about my hormones. And so I don't remember exactly, but I probably saw some webinar or newsletter, something came across, and I was like, oh, that sounds like me. So I went to a conference. And, it's kind of like being in medical school, where you're in medical school and they start telling you about all these diseases. You're like, oh, I think I might have that,
I have that, and that.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I'm pretty sure I have that. So that's kind of what started the ball rolling. And then it was very difficult to find a doctor because that's, as I said, that's been 25 years ago. And those are the 2 decades where women have pretty much been blown off. Menopause is natural. Really, it's just a part of aging. And so, that's how I got into it. And I basically treated myself first. And I got into functional medicine and the gut health and all of that. And I mean, the whole thing has been helpful. There's traditional medicine that has been helpful, functional medicine, integrated medicine. I did Andrew Wild's course in 2000. We were actually at this course when 9/11 happened.
Oh, wow.
But one of the things we had, we met like for 2 weeks, I think, once a year. And one of the things we had to do was to try out everything. So I've seen chiropractors, I've seen craniosacral, I've seen acupuncture, I've seen, woo-woo healers, the whole thing. I've tried it all. And some was very helpful. Some I didn't see much, but, everybody's a little bit different and there's a lot out there. So that was one of the most helpful things I have done, because I think as physicians, we tend to say, oh, no, you don't want to see that chiropractor. But, I've been to chiropractors, been quite helpful. And so that was a really valuable experience for me. And it took me a while to get my hormones adjusted because, as I said, I was kind of experimenting on myself.
Right.
So it took me a while to get things settled. I had bleeding issues and this and that and so on. And but I did have a gynecologist who was most helpful. At least she didn't fight me about it. She was
Right.
helpful. So so that's kind of how I got started. And I felt so bad. I lived in Sausalito, and as I would come down the hill, from Sausalito, from San Francisco into Sausalito, I would just feel like I was just sinking. And all I could do is just get to the couch and get a glass of wine. That was my
Oh,
goal. So, I was like, this is not good. So, and some of my friends kind of noticed. They're like, because I'm like, oh, how about a glass of wine with this? And they're like, really, Marsha, do you really need that? So that was a wake up call as well. And so, yeah, that's how I got started.
do you think women are being dismissed when they say, I don't feel like myself? And how many women are walking around thinking something is wrong with them when it's actually their hormones?
Absolutely, they're being dismissed. It may be improving somewhat because when I first started in this, I can tell you women came to me and that was one of the first things they would say. They said, I don't need any blood work. And they said that, it's just menopause. It's just aging. You'll be fine. And so, yes, but they're not only dismissed, they're dismissed in general by medicine. I've had women with cardiovascular issues, and the cardiologist just kind of blew them up, especially if you're look pretty healthy, if you're thin and you don't have, diabetes or something like that, they tend to think you're fine. And women, heart disease is the number one cause of mortality in women. So yes, not just menopause, but in other areas. And also women tend to, and I can tell you in training, you hear this, but it's like they tend to have multiple things. My joints hurt. I just don't feel good. So it's very non-specific and nebulous. And
Mm-hmm.
doctors tend to blow that off. They tend to think, oh, well, here, how about an antidepressant? You'll feel better. And,
Right.
um, and so, yes, absolutely. And, up until the 90s, believe it or not, women were not included in research studies.
I know it's unbelievable, like
They
how that's
couldn't.
even possible.
Yeah.
You mentioned something that's really interesting that women, I interviewed a doctor yesterday actually, and she is an OBGYN and top of her field. You might know her, Liz Ellen Lafayette. I don't know if you know her, but she's from Marin. But the interesting thing that what she said, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, that men, predominantly have heart issues, heart attacks when they're younger. And it takes women, they're 20 years
Right.
that it's later because of the hormones. So that's why it is so important to get these hormones checked, because these heart attacks and heart disease come about because of poor hormone health. And so that is why this conversation is so incredibly important, because people don't think that women have heart attacks. And when they do have it, that is much later in life than most men. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that is so that's absolutely correct. And so what happens, women are protected by their hormones until,
Right.
let's say, they reach 50.
Right.
And the curve for men and cardiovascular disease goes up like that. For women, it goes up very, very slowly until menopause. 10 years. 10 years post-menopause, they're right up there with men. So it's astounding that we have looked at this, that we have tried. It's hard to study. There's so many misperceptions about it. But back in the 1980s, they studied, they did giving women, menopausal women hormones. And as it turned out, a very, very large percentage of those women had had a hysterectomy. So they did not get a progestogen. And so, but in that study, there was like a 50% reduction in heart disease. So
Wow.
that was one of the things that precipitated the Women's Health Initiative. But they did the Women's Health Initiative all wrong. And so it just created more confusion, and it got sensationalized, like, oh, it causes breast cancer, and oh, it causes blood clots. But it's that when they went back years, decades later, 2 decades later, they're like, maybe that's not true. It looks like the women who took estrogen only actually had a decreased incidence in breast cancer. And And what about heart disease? Well, we couldn't really tell. The average age in the Women's Health Initiative was 63. They did
Wow.
not look at menopausal symptoms. If you had menopausal symptoms, you were not eligible for the study. So it was just a crazy study that got, you know, just got carried away. And doctors for the last 2 decades have avoided hormones because of that study, which has really been shown to be not valid in so many ways. So I think the tide has shifted because they've gone back to look at it. They used the wrong hormones. They took the wrong women. They didn't look at uh, the timing and all that. So yeah, uh, the cardiovascular issue is huge. And so what I do with my patients now, so I get them, usually I get them in their 40s and 50s. And so if someone's been on even if they've been on hormones, okay, for 10 years, I follow lipids just to kind of see, are we looking at here? And there's some genetic things that can increase their risk. So I look at all that. And then after about 10 years, I get a calcium score, and bone density comes in there too. But a calcium score is basically a CT scan of your coronary arteries. So it takes like 5 minutes. I don't think there's any dye or anything. They just do a scan and look at the coronary arteries. If there's calcium, then I refer to cardiology and we go from there. But absolutely, women need to be screened for cardiovascular disease. There needs to be a heightened awareness that women have different symptoms. I had a patient tell me she read this thing on, she had a very high calcium score. She was in the process of seeing a cardiologist, and she read this thing, and it had, it was in the if you have a high calcium score, if you have coronary atherosclerosis, here's some things you might have. And it goes through all this litany of symptoms, chest pain, fatigue, and a whole bunch of stuff. And at the very bottom, it says, if you are female or if you're a woman, your symptoms may be different. And that's all it says. It didn't say how they might be different, just that, and that is true. So again, once again, women get blown off. They may just have fatigue. They may just have uh, shortness of breath is pretty common, but I had one woman who had jaw pain. Now, some jaw pain is not, some men will get that as well. But yeah,
Interesting.
she was young. She was in her 50s. She was athletic, and she got kind of tossed around a little bit. And finally, someone, I don't remember exactly what happened, but she was diagnosed with coronary artery disease, big time. And but
Wow.
it did not fit the picture. That if you when I go to the doctor, they look at me because I'm not overweight, and I don't have high blood pressure, but they look at me and they're like, "You're fine. You don't have anything wrong with
Right.
you." And so yes. I mean, sort of back to the original question. Women, you have, and I tell women something, they're like, okay, I'm going to see the cardiologist. And I'm like, okay, you tell them X, Y, and Z so that they will pay attention. Because if you,
Right.
you just go in and say, well, I just kind of feel bad, they're just going to say, okay, here's your statin. That's it. And so, but I mean, I think there is more awareness now. We're just having to fight harder for it.
Right. Is there an ideal age or window where hormone support makes the biggest difference?
Well, I would say yes, there is. So you want to start looking in when you're perimenopausal. So what happens as women go in sort of you're born with a certain number of eggs, and every ovulatory cycle you lose so many eggs, and so over time you're going to lose them all. And when you get to that point, you've lost all your eggs, menopause. So but during that time you can have cycles where you don't ovulate, and so but you still can have a period. Your estrogen still goes up, but what happens,
Mhm.
you don't ovulate, you don't make progesterone. That can lead to heavy bleeding and things like that. So a lot of times in perimenopause, a little progesterone does wonders, helps with sleep, helps with mood swings and cramping. And then I just kind of follow people. I don't do, they don't need a whole lot. They just need some support. But progesterone helps sleep. That corrects a lot of things. And
Oh, that's everything.
yeah,
Like
sometimes
that sleep component, my gosh.
sometimes testosterone can also be very helpful in that perimenopausal period. And you kind of wait until periods stop or women start having hot flashes. And then you add in sometimes a small amount of estrogen. So it's different for everyone. But I would say 45 to 55 is a window. Maybe a little, some women don't have, some women actually don't go in, let's say maybe 5 years post menopause. So if you don't have menopause until 55, then maybe you can go a little bit longer. But you need to get those things in early because we can't always back up,
Right. Like
like
you don't want to go too far. It's probably good for everyone to get their hormones checked because even I would say, I mean, I think I'm a doctor. Clearly I'm not. But don't you think they need to have a baseline even in their 30s? I mean, maybe that has to do with reproduction of people conceiving. Does that impact things at all?
Well, what happens is that it's complex, and the hormone cycle is it's not static. You don't have estrogen goes up and estrogen comes down. Progesterone goes up. It's not like that. It's cyclic. So part of the cycle it's low, comes up high, then it's low, then it drops down. So you have to pay attention to that and where you're drawing the line in the cycle. As long as you're having normal periods, hormone levels are probably not indicated. Now, if you're having erratic periods or you have signs of insulin resistance and things, then they can be helpful to see where you are. I use the levels. Your traditional doctor will say levels aren't helpful, but I find them very helpful. If I do it on a certain day, then when progesterone is supposed to be high, and
Mhm.
if it's low or non-existent, I know that woman did not ovulate. So she could really benefit from progesterone. So there are, but there is a window, and they made a big deal out of that in the Women's Health Initiative. And some say you should not start hormones in women, 65 and older. And I would say it is harder. I have done it in some women, and it's just different. I don't see the big turnaround like I do in younger women. And sometimes, they'll have problems, I don't know, with bleeding or this. It's just not as effective. Plus, the fact that you have to be a little bit careful because this they did see in the Women's Health Initiative by starting by making the average age 63. A lot of those women already had heart disease, they had hypertension, they had
Right.
diabetes. They didn't screen any of that out. So having heart disease and starting estrogen can be a little iffy because you can interrupt plaque and actually lead to plaque rupture. So you have to be very careful about that. But I have done it in some cases, but it's harder. So I would say if you're in your 30s and you had a hysterectomy for endometriosis, you should be on hormones right away.
Mhm.
No question. You don't need to measure them or anything. Not then. Just start them. Then you can measure levels to get them where you feel good. But you're not going to have any if you had a complete hysterectomy. So, and that can lead to disaster because that early menopause increases risk for osteoporosis, for genitourinary problems, or uh, dry eyes are a common symptom of menopause, and just on and on and on, neurologic things. Um, so yeah, you would like, I like to see women when they're just noticing some symptoms, when they're
Mhm.
having periods, and then we can just kind of truck along a little bit, and as things change, already plugged in, they know what to look for, and we can start. So,
What is something you see in your patients every day that shocks you, but no one is talking about?
uh, well, I think what I have to back up. Just what used to shock me is that they all thought hormones they were going to get breast cancer
Right.
every day, and so now that that's kind of been like, we really don't think that's true. That actually hormones are protective, but they're very cautious about saying that because I guess of medical legal stuff. I don't know. But so it still shocks me when I have someone come in and say, well, there's so much misinformation out there, that I'm worried about getting breast cancer. And quite honestly, it makes it harder when you're trying to treat someone. The other thing I would say is maybe shocks is a little much. I mean, living in California and San Francisco, I think I saw less of lifestyle stuff. I think people tended to be, less likely overweight. They were more likely to exercise and do things like that. But alcohol is a problem. I would say almost everyone drinks, and that's maybe not shocking, but not good.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
How do hormonal changes affect relationships, intimacy, and how we react to people and that we're dealing with every day?
Right. Well, they have a huge impact on your emotional and mental well-being. Huge. And if you think about it, how many friends and neighbors and all do you know who started having major league medical marital problems around their 45 to 55? And I had one woman tell me after we got her kind of all straightened out, and she was like, you know, I might not have gotten divorced had I been on hormones.
Wow.
So
I've
mental,
heard that from some
yeah,
friends, actually.
yeah. So mental, emotional, sex drive, libido just goes in the toilet. It's like, and it can be painful and uncomfortable, much less no desire. And so, and hormones play a huge role in that. So I would say, partnerships really suffer in the menopausal woman if they don't get help. And it doesn't necessarily get better, like women,
No, it's
they
definitely
often
not.
have antidepressants, and antidepressants will give them a little boost for a little bit, but then it goes back down. Then they up the dose, maybe not so much that time, and then they just kind of live with it, or they get divorced, or they end up separating. And I would say intimacy is a huge part, and I know women who are on hormones who are much older, and their sex life is great, and it's not just about the physical, it's really much more about the
Emotional.
mental, yeah, and the desire for connection and sort of, I mean, they impact all of that. I remember Suzanne Summers. Actually did she interviewed me one time for her Forever Health thing that she had, but she was in her late 60s, 70s when, and she and her husband still had an active sex life. And it was, it was hormones. And so it's going to be very difficult to have a really good sex life without hormones. And I think that, men got their Viagra, and some of these people who are now getting into it, they're actually compounding things for women. Testosterone works great for women. But there's some others that they're using Viagra, little, I forget what else, little testosterone, and it actually increases blood flow to the clitoris and can really enhance orgasms. And as one gets older, orgasms can decline in intensity and pleasure. So yeah. So did I leave anything out there?
No, I think we got all that. Let's shift to another topic that I find really interesting. Obviously, I take a ton of supplements, but if you think about it, we all self-diagnose our supplements. And according to me, before I met you, I was on the perfect amount of supplements. Everything was great. And then you decided we needed to do a vitamin levels check. And oh my gosh, I looked like I was starving from Africa. My vitamin D was not existent. My omega oils, which I take, by the way, every day, was taking one every day. And now I take 2 in the morning and 2 at night. It was shocking to me.
Right.
And I'm on all these supplements. I think everyone should have their vitamin levels checked for a variety of reasons, but it's such a waste of money to be self-diagnosing these vitamins that you don't even know how much you need or actually what you need. Can you go into that a little bit?
Um, yes, I would agree. So these tests that they do are not most of them are not validated by the FDA or the lab people or whatever. So insurance won't cover any of them. So
Right.
it's and they're not
But
cheap.
they're not expensive. But they're not that expensive because
Oh,
how
they're
much do you
not.
spend in buying vitamins that you don't
Oh,
even
you're
need?
right. You're right. You know, you have to say, how much do you spend on your coffee every month? And it's certainly, you're right. But it does kind of, people will push back. And I think there is sort of the perception, well, I read about this. I know these are what I need. But I do think it's very helpful. I do mine once a year. I run one of the vitamin levels, probably the one that we did on you, and surprisingly, they're pretty good. I'm like, okay, I guess all that massive stuff that I carry around and take is
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All the pounds of vitamins we're carrying around.
that's
I
it.
know.
I have to have an extra carry on when I fly because I have all these supplements. But but yeah, I was actually quite pleased, and I've done that probably for the last 4 or 5 years, just to see because I take a lot of stuff. But
What do you find that most people are lacking in that is so important on their vitamin levels? Is there anything consistent that you see that women are that their levels are
B
low or
vitamins,
high?
B
Oh, B.
vitamins are
Hmm.
huge.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, some minerals, zinc is common.
Hmm.
Um, uh, the what else? They do fairly well on the minerals, it seems like, but zinc is a big one. Let me think. What else? What else do they? Oh, on the vitamin C, antioxidants are frequently low. So
Hmm.
this panel that I do, it gives you your oxidative capacity, if you will, and that's frequently those are low. But so I would say those are the most common. And then it also has an immune index, which they look at a bunch of different stuff and give you an idea of how your immune system is functioning. And again, these tests are not absolute, but I think they can be used as a guide. It's
Exactly. They're helpful. I mean,
yes, yeah, I agree.
at
But
what point does beauty stop being about products and start being about what's happening on the inside?
um, well, it's always. I mean, products are helpful, but the inside's really, I mean, it never stops. I mean, I think, let's just go back. I think hormones are the most important. You know, estrogen, I don't know if you've seen, but they're like women are putting estradiol on their faces and all that. Well,
Right.
there's actually some data to support that, but I think that the best data is for the estriol, which is a little it's the end, so it's not going to stimulate estrogen receptors, but it's very effective for outer appearances. But I think if you inside, it's critical. If you, I also, using myself again, when I first moved to California, I was, I was from Texas. We ate tacos and burgers and French fries and
Barbecue.
barbecue, and went to after night shift, we'd all go to, what was the name, some taco place, and have tortillas and all that stuff. And so when I got to California, it was quite a shock. But I know that, and again, doing my whole sort of what's wrong with me, it was as I changed my diet, I literally felt like a different person.
Hmm.
My fatigue, aches and pains was very, very related to what I was taking in. And it's I you can go back to Michael Pollan, he's like, eat real food, not too much.
Right.
Eat food, mostly plants, not too much. And I think that's a really pretty good, pretty simple, pretty easy way to look at it. And there's so many of these diet fads that come out. It's like grain free, uh, but again, grain free, no meat, this, that. But and even some of the studies on vegans, they have lower risk for certain cardiovascular disease and stuff, but they have a lot of vitamin deficiencies. They have
Right.
trouble with muscle, maintaining muscle.
Hmm.
So I think the Mediterranean diet is probably the most studied and the most, if you want to just pick one, that would be the one to pick. It's fruits and vegetables. It's just
Olives, avocado, olive oil,
olive oil, mostly fish,
salmon,
yeah,
right?
salmon. And so that is the one that is the most studied and has been shown to be beneficial over and over and over again. I always say it's kind of like coffee. They keep trying to prove that it's bad for you, but every time they do a study, it's like, oh, well, actually, these people did better. So,
And
so
it makes people happy.
thanks.
I really do think that all these things that we're talking about are super important, but there you have to have joy in life. To me is so important from a food perspective, from what you do, how you love, how you laugh, and your work and everything. All these things matter. If a cup of coffee brings you joy, drink the damn coffee. I mean,
Absolutely.
honestly, right?
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, coffee's great. It's got powerful polyphenols and things that are really good for you. And they've done study after study when literally trying to prove that coffee's bad. And, it's like, okay, we're going to test these people on exams. Those who took the coffee did better, And so, anyway, I would say just, yes, it matters very much what you eat. You cannot eat burgers and fries and,
No.
things out of
And think you're going to have a good outcome.
think you're going to have a good outcome. So, but it matters, and also exercise is
Mm,
is huge. But you cannot exercise your way without a healthy diet, and you can't lose weight. You can't do so. I would say diet is number one, and exercise is number two, and then get hormones, and then you can. I never really did these sort of detox and things like that, but for some people it seems to be very helpful. So I don't fight it. I don't say no, don't do that. Sometimes part of it, one of my cousins does this detox every year, and it's like you do 2 shakes a day and then you eat a meal, but the meal has to have no corn, soy, wheat, blah blah blah. And she loves it. She feels great after she does it. Her joints get better, her brain is clearer, and so absolutely, what you put in your body matters as much as your hormones and your supplements, and it all goes together. There's not any one thing, but I guess if I
right.
could pick one, it would probably be, I don't know, toss up diet and hormones. I don't know if you can do it with just diet, but
Right.
yeah.
Well, I thought I was doing it for years on just diet, and clearly I was way wrong. What is the connection between gut health, hormones, and skin?
Well, gut health is huge. So, functional medicine is a big proponent of gut. Every disease starts in the gut. And I think over my 25 years in this sort of field, when I first started, we really didn't know very much. So we had these tests, and they would, here's what's in the microbiome, and they're like, well, what the hell does that mean? And so they've gotten better and better and better at that. But we still don't know how much do we need dose wise probiotics, what kind exactly, but we have some clues. There's some really ways to really help with that. And I frequently, or maybe we'll do stool testing. And there's the stool test that they do looks at health. So it's not like your doctor does one and they look for ovum parasites, they look for blood, they look for bacterial, infections of some kind. And these tests are really looking at health. So they will look like, do you have any evidence of, infection? So they'll look for that. But then they also look at um, the bacteria that's normally there. And we now have a pretty good idea of that. When we first started doing these tests, we knew when we saw pathogens, but we weren't sure what to do with the rest of it. And they're getting much better at that. They do everything from, there's just been so much data on it. They use very high dose probiotics. I think it was Lactobacillus plantarum in inflammatory bowel disease, and many of them did did very well. And then they also, I don't know if this is these fecal transplants. So people with inflammatory bowel disease have abnormal flora, and they have done taking from a normal, healthy person, and they do a transplant. I don't know if they do it, rectally or swallow it or whatever, but it's not miraculous, but it can be very helpful for some of those people. And so I think we're still in the planning or in the exploring phase of the microbiome. We know so much more than we did a few years ago, but there's still, we don't have it pinpointed, but and you'll see supplements come out. One of the things that they developed over my just time from when we would give probiotics. Well, probiotics have to go through the stomach, and they will be killed off by the acid. So now they've developed these probiotics that they're in spores, which are like enclosed little globular things, and so they can get through the gut and into the stomach and into the gut. So I would say the gut is absolutely crucial, but it generally can be fixed most by diet, fiber, vegetables, that fermented foods. So yeah, it's the gut is huge.
How do hormones impact brain health and cognitive decline?
Well, so many women, that's one of a big complaints when they start hitting menopause and estrogen fall. They complain of quote brain fog, or they lose a word that's like, what was that? Who was that? I can't think of their name. And that is estrogen. Replace estrogen, that comes back. I'll never forget. I lost my car in the parking lot, and it was like in San Francisco in one of the garages, and I was like, I have no idea where it is. No idea.
Was it at Union Square? Because that one's so confusing, right? Because they have two sides, and if you're on the wrong side, you just keep going. I've totally done that.
I went around trying to find it, but so that's a very common thing. And let me just say one other thing about. So I think so in these studies, it has to be absolute before they will say anything. But there was definitely a trend to decrease risk for dementia in the Women's Health Initiative, which was the wrong hormones at the wrong time and all that. So definitely hormones have an impact on cognition for sure. Yeah.
Do you believe stress and emotional health play a role in hormone imbalance?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Particularly cortisol. So stress is going to increase your cortisol. It's going to interfere with your sleep. It's going to interfere with your hormone production because your body sees that as, oh my God, we are in danger. We got to bump everything up. So more cortisol, epinephrine, norepinephrine, neurotransmitters go up, and you're just in a fight or flight thing all the time. And that can B vitamins chews up B vitamins too. And so your hormones can help that. When your progesterone gets metabolized into cortisol, it's like a prerequisite. And so when you're in that perimenopausal period, you're not ovulating and you're not making progesterone, all of a sudden you have no reserve. You're like, oh, I just can't do this. You cannot raise your cortisol. That's not your backup system is not functioning. And that's when many women really fall off the wagon, when they're in highly stressful jobs and they're perimenopausal and all and family and all that. So yes, absolutely. Stress, sleep. I mean, stress impacts sleep, which we know is huge.
Right.
Yeah. So
what is one symptom women should never ignore?
Okay, let me think. Are you in any age group, or what would you say? Are you talking about the whole group?
Anything that comes to mind.
I think what comes to mind for me is the whole cardiovascular thing and their risk for heart disease. So these
that's huge.
Usually women in their, especially if they've been on hormones. I'd say women in their 60s, but it can happen in younger women too. So you should never ignore symptoms of fatigue, list things that are just not right with you. And
Right.
and I think getting a calcium score will get you in the door of the cardiologist. If you come to me as an internist and you're like, oh, I just feel tired. Do you have chest pain? No, not really. I maybe had a little indigestion, but no, I can't get you into cardiology for that. But if I get a calcium score, if it's zero, then okay, we can manage that. But if it's anything other than that, I can open the door for you. So I would say never ever ignore those sort of any change, like I said, indigestion, um, changes in bowel habits. Those can all be cardiac, believe it or not. And fatigue,
Interesting.
syncope is another one. I had one woman who kept falling out of a kayak. She was doing big kayaking and she would just pass out. And
Oh my gosh.
yeah, took me forever to get her in to see cardiology, but we did. And so yeah, so I think women's biggest risk is cardiovascular. I guess the other thing I would say is, keep have a doctor that knows you that can, and I know that's not that easy right now, but that you can talk to, and it's just because sometimes I see patients and they're like, oh, well, I had a little pain up here. And I'll say, well, maybe you need to see your primary. Maybe you need to look at that. Oh my gosh, I had my gallbladder was inflamed or whatever. So, and women have a high pain tolerance. We don't go as a man and be like, oh my God, I'm dying here. Do something. So, but women are like, no, it's not too bad. I can almost stand up and walk. So,
You don't have, I think the biggest thing what you're saying is you don't need to go through this suffering.
yes.
You can go, oh, I'll get through it. I'll be fine. No, actually listen to your body, because you wouldn't do this if it was your child or your husband. You wouldn't say, oh, yeah, keep suffering and you'll feel fine. Like, actually
Yeah. Yeah.
acknowledge it. It's not going to go away. It's only going to get worse. What is the most misunderstood hormone?
I think, hmm, well, all of them, but progesterone and testosterone for women. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you've had a hysterectomy, complete hysterectomy, they'll say, all you need is estrogen. You don't really need progesterone. You don't need any of those other hormones. And they ignore testosterone in women. We're just trying to, there's a woman, I forget her name, but she's on kind of big in social media. She's a urologist and she's actually all in for testosterone. So she's kind of gotten some word out there. But I would say those two are the most ignored.
Mm-hmm.
Progesterone and always testosterone and mostly progesterone unless you have a uterus.
Right. What do you do when your day isn't flowing?
Um, I usually have a cup of coffee. And then things perk up, when I'm like, oh, I just can't get
It's
through.
not just the coffee, though, that I think it's kind of just the time that you're like, I'm going to have a coffee and I'm going to just sit and you sit and breathe for a minute. So it's more of the experience of the coffee, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely, yes. I mean, I want caffeinated coffee. I don't want any of that decaf stuff, but it does. Yeah, it's just a moment to gather, to sort of process, and just sort of sit with yourself. That's my favorite thing. I grew up drinking coffee in the morning with my mother, and it was just the special time of day, and
Oh, that's nice.
so that's my thing. I would say that when it's not flowing, a cup of coffee usually helps.
Where's your happy place?
Oh gosh. If I said the same first thing that came into my mind, I would say San Francisco.
Oh, I love that. You're going to have to come out and visit.
I know, I miss it so much. I look at but it's just so difficult now, everything. And yeah, so but yes, that would if I had to pick one place that said I could go anywhere, that's what I would do.
Oh, how important is self care to you? And what are a few of your favorite diet and exercise tips?
Well, self-care is absolutely crucial, and I think as women, I my previous husband died in like 2012, and I've had the last 10, 15 years by myself. and it's been wonderful. You know, I mean, I take care of myself. I don't have to worry about what somebody else eats or I, it's just, like I told you, I tried all the chiropractic. Massage is huge for me. Uh,
Hmm.
I'd say,
Agree.
and just, you don't have to sit there and, chant om, just sort of sitting in nature. Nature is huge. That's why I miss San Francisco so much. Um,
Right. The views, and it's
yeah.
magical.
And I will tell you that, and you asked me about lifestyle, did you say?
No, your favorite diet and exercise tips.
Okay. Diet wise, again, Mediterranean diet.
Hmm.
I would say don't count calories. Fasting is a good way to manage your weight. And I'm not talking days of fasting. Some people like doing that, and that's fine. But just the intermittent fasting where you should eat 3 hours, at least 3 hours before bedtime. Nothing but after that. And fasting for women, they need a little bit longer. So I would say 14 to 16 hours. So if you eat dinner at 7, then I would eat the next day by 10 or 11. But I don't count coffee because I have my coffee.
No.
Sorry. And and then as far as exercise, I would highly recommend that you get something that you like to do, whether it's in San Francisco, I walk miles and miles with my dog. But I also went to bar classes and things like they were just things that I enjoyed.
Hmm.
Had some injuries, so now what I do is I actually have a trainer 4 times a week.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, and it's made a huge difference for me. And I don't, if you are someone who can get up and do it yourself and do your whole thing, great. But I'm not.
Yeah.
I need to have to get up and go. I need to pay for it because then I will absolutely show up. And so those are the
Do
exercise.
you do a lot of weight training, or is it cardio? What exactly is in
I'll
your
do
workout?
2 days of strength and work just whole body strength, but I do deadlifts. I can deadlift almost 100 pounds. So,
Wow, look at you.
well, it's taken quite a while to get there, and sometimes I'll miss and I'll have to back off. But yes, strength in the whole realm of exercise, strength is number one. Strength training. Um, you can do some cardiovascular, but that's not, if you have to give up one or the other, give up the cardiovascular. You can get that in strength training. You'll get increasing your heart rate and that kind of thing. So strength trumps all really. And but if you like cardiac, that's fine too. One of the things for women, as especially if you're not a very big person, is you need weight bearing exercise for your bones. So
Right.
if you can, so you can get that much more with strength training. In fact, I will refer people with osteoporosis for training to help their bones, and it's very effective. I had a little bit of bone density, and so I started this little more heavy duty strength program, and I repeated it. It was like 2 or 3 years before I got around to it, but my bone density had actually improved. I was now no longer in a
Wow.
peanut range, so you can do it, but focus on the strength. And
What it, oh, I'm sorry.
I was
Finish.
just going to say, focus on the strength and what you will do. Don't start a program that I hate this every day. Something that you enjoy.
No, you have to like it. And I also think it's important to change it up all the time. You have to be constantly shocking your body.
Yes.
And because it gets so accustomed to the same workout over and over, you're just not, it's not as effective. So
Yeah,
I totally agree with you, changing it and enjoying it, trying
enjoying it.
different things. What's the best daily habit for hormone balance?
Um, I guess probably a boring life, where you sleep 8 hours. 7 hours is the magic number. Eight's good, but start getting much under 7, that's not so good. So if you can get 7 hours of sleep and then a a a balance of, you get up, you go to work, but if your job is really really stressful, you need to try to dial that back. You need like a calm life. I said a boring life, but
Yeah.
You're not fighting it every day. You don't have your horrible boss and all that kind of thing. There's a calm and a peace to your life. You enjoy. You have a purpose. You enjoy what you're doing. You don't have to work so hard that that you're exhausted. And make sure you get those healthy diet, the exercise. That's going to help your hormones as much as anything. And then hormone supplementation post menopause.
What is the biggest mistake women make with their health?
Um, Ignoring it.
I was just going to say that. I literally was going to say that because I did.
Yeah.
Like I felt pretty good. And I think it's not like you start feeling terrible overnight. It's like little by little and you just kind of think, "Oh, well, I guess this is just how I feel." But you're totally right. Ignoring it, the worst thing. What is one keep going, I'm sorry.
It's very insidious, like you said. And women, they can sort of start feeling bad, but they don't do anything about it for until it gets really bad, or until
Right.
someone says, you need to go see your doctor. So listen to your friends, I guess would be another.
Exactly. Oh no, my best friend was just slobbering me. Um, what is one supplement most women should consider?
A multivitamin, a good,
Mm-hmm.
uh, yeah. If you don't take
Oh, you did teach me because I was taking a multivitamin, but mine had iron, and you told me that absolutely no iron because I'm no longer menstruating. So it was, that really surprised me. I didn't think that that was a big deal. Do you want to talk about that a bit?
well, iron can be dangerous. So women, they bleed every month, right? They're losing iron every month. So some women get anemic, they need to take iron supplements. But once your periods stop, you don't need iron. And iron gets processed and deposited in the liver, and it can damage your liver. So you do not want iron unless you're deficient. So,
Right.
and there's a hereditary disease called hemochromatosis where they make too much iron and it leads to liver failure. And the treatment
Wow.
is you give blood every month or give blood as needed.
Hmm.
So yeah, so the iron, it's kind of a big deal. Most multivitamins don't put it in there because of that, because most people are not aware. So sometimes I think in pregnancy, or if someone's, or a woman who's menstruating every month is losing, and some women, especially doing that. I have had women so anemic they had to have IV iron.
Wow.
So
That's
that
amazing.
healing period can be huge for some women. And iron, just taking it orally, it can kind of upset your stomach, nauseous, diarrhea,
Right.
constipation and stuff. So yeah. So that don't take iron unless you're iron deficient. And the only other one would be copper. Um, in general, you don't want it in your, you get it in other ways, and copper can be dangerous as well. So in general, we don't give copper.
Aging gracefully or aging powerfully?
Oh God, that's easy, powerfully.
Right? I agree. Fill in the blank. Women deserve to feel blank at every age.
Empowered.
Oh, I love that. What have I not asked you today that you'd like to share?
I think you've been pretty good. I guess I would like to say to women that you do not have to accept the the whole menopausal thing, the feeling bad. Now, if you do and you feel good, that's great. I'm not going to criticize you for that. But if you don't, and or just see someone, talk to them. In fact, I'll give you. You can give my the info at marshanunleymd.com, and I will do like a 15-minute strategy call with anyone who wants.
Oh, thank you so much. I will have that in the show notes for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Absolutely.
complimentary, to just kind of see, where are you? What kind of doctor do you need, or that kind of thing. So, but that's what I would say, because menopause has been so maligned, and it's like, and it's not, and I've seen some things on the internet that, women are like, well, so now they're telling us we need these hormones and we don't need that. So there's sort of a little bit of a counter, like I'm powerful as I am. And that's fine if you feel that way. But many, 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 many women do not. And you might even be more powerful if you take the,
Oh, I love that. That's true.
yeah,
You
yeah,
you
yeah.
don't need to suffer. And I think it's really important that you find a doctor. I mean, I obviously have my main doctor, but even my main doctor, she even said to me, no, you need to go to someone that specializes in hormones. And I really hope that people will understand that, you know, you have specialized this in for so long that you're an
Oh,
absolute expert in these hormones. And most of these other doctors, they have they know a bit about it, but really are not experts in it. So you really find the right doctor. I mean, I think you're amazing. I recommend you highly. And I
I
think
would,
it's super important.
speaking to that, people think, well, I'm going to go to an endocrinologist. Your endocrinologist is not particularly interested in your menopausal symptoms. They do
Right.
diabetes, they do heart disease, they do these crazy, weird endocrinopathies and all that. But to them, menopause, and I've had many, many women come to me from the endocrinologist because they don't really care. Now that may change, but that's not been their shtick.
Their focus, right?
No, they're into much more, um, I don't know, just more complex endocrinopathy. Diabetes is a big thing that you get with endocrinologists. So
Mhm.
I have some that patients that have gone to endocrinologists and it's worked out fine. But most of the time they would go for their thyroid disease and I would do their hormones. They wouldn't give them hormones.
Right.
I think that's changing with the new information around menopause and the hormones are actually good. So we may see a change in that, but yeah. So
I think so many women walk around feeling off, tired, disconnected, and not like themselves, and just assume it's part of aging, and it doesn't have to be. What I love about this conversation is that it reminds us if you're not broken, you're not broken. You just might not be supported in the right way. Thank you, Marsha, for sharing your knowledge and for helping women take back their power when it comes to their health. And for all of you watching, your health, your energy, your vitality, it matters. I am Christina Flack, and I am too busy, and I'll see you next week. Please like, subscribe, and follow. And Marsha, I can't thank you enough for being here. It is just, I could chat with you all day about this. I find that you are fascinating and an incredible woman. So thank you so much.